still open?
That one is, yeah, and it's for sale. The other bar was owned by a sailor. He died, so it's closed. You can see more.
As I'm riding along on the highway, headed up to Casper, I see this little sign, and this sign says Midwest. And I said, I don't know, something about it struck a chord. I guess because I have family roots from the Midwest, so I veered off the highway. I took the exit, traveled down about 5 to 8 miles, and as I'm going in, I didn't realize it at the time, but there's these oil fields, these giant old oil fields. At one time, back in the 1920s, Midwest Wyoming, which is now a town of 500 or less, very washed out, very dried out, kind of run down, very much abandoned. But back in the day, 1920s, this was the San Francisco of its time. It was the Silicon Valley of oil. People were flying in lobster from Manhattan, and oil companies basically parked their companies there. What they did is they would hire a bunch of married men to come work on this oil field, because they knew that married men would bring their family, and married men were less inclined to, just come for the money and then leave. They would be stable, they'd work hard, and they would remain in the company town that these oil fields built. So they did that, and Midwest was basically a company town for oil field companies. And I'm heading on into the town. I pull into the gas station, and I see about 5 rows of houses, very modest, small town. Pull in, start off on foot, and I basically just walk around with my camera and my pitch about this entire trip and these stories. And I have a little 3 or 4 little cards where I have pictures of people from the previous town, and it kind of shows people who I've talked to before, and I kind of tell them about what I'm trying to do, and trying to meet anyone and everyone and ask them questions about life, and ask them questions about their meaning and their spirituality and how they view things, and what struggles they go through, and what trials and tribulations, or what joys they have, what brings them happiness, what wisdom do they have to share from their unique experience in life. And then that's really what this series of stories is all about. So I walk on the road, and there's nobody outside. I think they're in their homes. There's probably just a few hundred people living in this small little town, almost like a small neighborhood. And in the distance, I see a guy working on old cars, and I'm talking Model A's, Model T's. And I've always been a big fan of Model A's. I've, kind of grown up idolizing maybe someday getting one of those cars for a variety of reasons. I used to be a mechanical engineer. I was in the mafia movies in the Wild West, and I saw this guy working on the car. So I approached him and I said, "Hey, is that a Model A?" He says, yeah, it's Model A. Kind of looking at me a little suspiciously, like, who's this guy walking around? Never seen him before. Turns out to be the nicest guy, nicest person in the world. You could tell, and this is part of this trip, is I don't ask about politics. I don't ask about religion or things that tend to polarize people, on one side and another. I mean, it's about connecting with random strangers on the level of being a human being. So, I ask him about cars. I like cars. He obviously likes cars, and we get to talking. And turns out Gene, who you'll see the video of shortly, served many years in the United States Navy. He's seen a lot of things. He's been through a lot of things, and he was willing to share some of his story with us. And I'll leave it to Gene to tell a little bit about his journey and his life and advice that he has for younger people.
You make command decisions in your life. You have a point where you reach, you either slam against the wall, or you look at the wall and you back up and you go around the wall.
Makes a lot of sense.
So you have those options. And no, I wouldn't change anything, because I survived everything. There was the good, there was the bad.
Sure enough.
But it works out.
Any advice for somebody that is running into hardship, or maybe everything that they had crumbled into nothing? What advice would you give somebody like that?
Well, when you got nothing, you can start. And if you lose it, you can start again. Stay vertical. When I was a kid, I lived in a bombed out building. Now I'm 77. I got a house. I got some other property. And if I lose it tomorrow, okay, so we start again. Yeah.
Great perspective.
Started out in 65, and of course we all went to Vietnam. Came back, decommissioned a ship, got sent right back. It was okay, that's life, you know. Went to the East Coast, Mediterranean, and then of course we had our fracas over in Lebanon and all that. And in between we had Grenada. It's part of being an American. You meet a lot of people and you get to know what the other half thinks and what the other half does. When you're on a ship with 5,000 people, you're in a city, and in a city that floats, you know, you learn. As far as self-discipline to begin with, because they teach you that, then after that you got discipline of the law, which applies to the service and to your civilian counterparts.
Sure.
I think the biggest thing I miss about the service, and anybody would, is the camaraderie that you had. You didn't have real friends a whole lot, but you had a lot of acquaintances, and you learned from that. And 20 years, 40 years, 50 years, I met a nurse here at the VA clinic that was on a hospital ship with me in '68 in Vietnam.
No way. Huh.
I met a guy in Glen Rock that was a little beginning sailor, a seaman,
Yeah.
on the Independence, and that was the end of my tour. He shows up, hey, cool, you know, I remember you.
Sure.
So you run into people, it's coincidence, but you have those acquaintances and you have those things that you do and you can relate to. You know, like a police officer will relate to any police officer. A serviceman will relate to any of the services, not just the one he was in.
Yep.
You know, and it's the camaraderie. If you want to go deer hunting, just step out the back door.
You can do that in Casper if you want.
Yeah, I know.
You
You got turkeys too.
We got turkeys too.
Yeah.
I got one I got a name for it. It's named Thanksgiving.
Uh-huh, yeah. I used to have 2 geese, lunch and dinner.
What brought you here to
Now,
Midwest
this guy
Wyoming?
right here.
2 things. One, my brother and my son moved up here from Denver.
Okay.
And 2, Taxarado, which used to be Colorado, forced me to sell out and move up here.
What makes you stick around the area? Is it family? Is it getting away from things? Or
It's family. My son still lives right down the street, and it's the wide open spaces and Wyoming itself, which is, you know, I like it.
Yep.
I miss my trees in Colorado, but if you look right down there, open area, antelope. I got deer in my backyard. You know, it's a great place to live.
do you feel a sense of community in this area? Are there friends or?
There is some, but it's a divided town.
Yeah.
With factions that are one side and factions that are the other side, unfortunately. And it's like any place else, you live with it.
I hear that.
And the people I have that are acquaintances and friends, you know,
He's the only one that
they're
gives a
great.
damn
We
about
back
the
each
rebel
other
cops.
up.
The next paratrooper
and
cop.
the others, well, you ignore
He's not a
them.
cop.
It's like
He's a rent-a-cop.
all you
in the service, you had the
Rated by
same
the
problem. You know, you had the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Do you have a pretty good community of veterans in the area, or people you?
There's quite a bunch of us here, although, you know, we're not that much in the get-together mode,
I got it.
because again, the factions, you know,
Divided.
and those of us that are vets, we're kind of old, you know, so
I hear it. Yeah.
there's not too many young vets here.
How many years did you serve?
22,
22 years. Awesome.
22, yep.
If you think about your life up to this point, what's one thing that stands out as being really positive? Something you look back on with pride?
Well, being an ex-foreigner, it's being an American.
I hear that. Where originally were you from?
Germany.
What's the thing about having that citizenship that makes you feel real proud?
Freedom.
Well said.
I've been to Japan, Okinawa, Vietnam, France,
For sure.
Italy, a lot of places. And the little things that you have here that you don't even think about, the freedoms you have. For example, do I want to go to New York tomorrow? Yes. Nobody tells me I can or can't. And of course, you got the big freedoms, like gun rights and civil rights and all that. And again, it's the little freedoms that I appreciate.
Cut your age in half and give a piece of advice to that younger man who doesn't know what's coming yet. What would you say to that younger self?
My advice always is to the younger people, right?
Yep.
Is when you get out of high school, take 3 or 4 years and transition into real adulthood by joining the military. No matter what service you go into, it's a transition between your high school days and adulthood. Because if you can't hack it for 3 years or 4 years in the service, then you're going to have a problem when you just go to college, you're continuing your high school stuff, and you're getting educated, that's fine. But you're not getting educated in life. And when we hit that wall of life, then you can hack it or not, And there isn't anything that they can throw at me today that they didn't throw at me in the service. And hey, I'm doing great.